This week, President Trump negotiated with China to spur the economies of both countries.
I guess on the scale of from 0 to 10, with 10 being the best, I would say the meeting was a 12.
A business and jobs boom has been a promise of his second term.
How does this factor into President Trump's idea for a resurgence of U.S. manufacturing?
We're bringing in a large amount of jobs, and a large amount of very technically skilled jobs. So this is a prime example of bringing back manufacturing into the United States.
We look at the prospects of a relaunch of America as an industrial powerhouse.
The fall harvest is being met with some falling expectations.
So the prices are not good for the grains.
President Trump's tariffs have hit America right in the breadbasket, where hopes for a good harvest are balanced by a new deal with China.
Tremendous amounts of the soybeans and other farm products are going to be purchased immediately.
Washington, D.C. spends more per student than almost any other school system in the country.
As a parent, are you getting your money's worth?
Nope. We ended up bringing a tutor on in 4th grade for my older daughter.
D.C. ranks near rock bottom on how well kids learn. We'll look into what's failing in the nation's capital.
Welcome to Full Measure. I'm Sharyl Attkisson. Our history of manufacturing is marked by waves of innovation, decline, and revival. It's shaped our national prosperity and identity. President Trump's second term comes with a promise for America to reclaim its dominance in manufacturing and critical technology. The White House now lists more than $8.8 trillion in total U.S. and foreign investments. What's the impact on our national security and our own communities? Today's cover story is good for business. In the sun-scorched desert just outside Phoenix, a manufacturing and technological revolution is unfolding. A giant foreign company is expanding its U.S. footprint with a staggering investment announced weeks into President Trump's second term.
Taiwan's semiconductor manufacturing company, TSMC, is pouring $165 billion into this site in Arizona. It's building 6 state-of-the-art chip factories to power everything from AI to iPhones.
This is one of our products.
This delicate electronic wafer, etched with hundreds of microchips, is the prize of this manufacturing surge, crafted right here for tech titans like Qualcomm and Apple.
Almost every other industry in the electronic space depends on semiconductors for what they do. We even have products that have gone to outer space and are right now filming Mars.
Touchdown confirmed.
We're safe on Mars.
Greg Jackson is an executive at Taiwan's TSMC in Arizona.
Yeah, I think it really changes the landscape. I mean, if you look over the years, we've dropped to somewhere around 10% or less chips made in the United States. Now we're bringing that back into the United States and bringing it back in the most advanced technology into the United States.
How does this factor into President Trump's idea for a resurgence of U.S. manufacturing?
This is a great example of resurgence of manufacturing. We're bringing in a large amount of jobs, and a large amount of very technically skilled jobs. So this is a prime example of bringing back manufacturing into the United States. It's not just creating the semiconductors, it's all of the ecosystem that goes around making semiconductors. It's everything that ties into it as well.
The most powerful AI chips in the world will be made right here in America.
President Trump has made a manufacturing surge a pillar of his second term, in part to reduce America's risky dependence on China and other foreign powers.
How has it been a precarious thing for us to rely so much on foreign-produced chips?
So I think if you look back to the COVID time, there was a lot of risk that came in from the supply chain by having things spread out all over the world. You know, the ports shut down, the airports shut down, people were unavailable to come to work. Having semiconductors back in the U.S. onshore reduces that risk and allows us to really fend for ourselves and be in charge of our own destiny.
America's first big manufacturing boom began in the 1800s with the Industrial Revolution. After the Civil War, industries like steel and railroads exploded. By 1900, the U.S. produced 30% of manufactured goods on the planet.
Industrialists like Henry Ford introduced mass production.
Ford's assembly line and other advances led to a peak in the 1950s. But in the 70s and 80s, a downturn triggered by globalization and automation. By 2000, we'd lost 5 million jobs, largely in steel, textiles, and electronics. Another dip followed the 2008 recession, 2 million more jobs gone. Now, Trump's strategy leans on incentives and steep tariffs, potentially 25% or more on imported chips. The policies are confusing to some and draw sharp criticism.
All right, let's be clear about something that's probably already clear to you. Donald Trump's so-called economic plan is not a plan. It's not even a concept of a plan.
But Trump and his allies say these policies are spurring many companies to build or expand on U.S. soil. TSMC is among the biggest, but dozens of manufacturing ventures have been announced so far in Trump's second term, with trillions in promised spending, including pharmaceutical, computer, energy, AI, and critical minerals companies. A project by Canada-based Cyclic Materials centers on this empty new warehouse in Mesa, Arizona. It will soon be buzzing with machinery, which will recycle and pulverize 8 tons of metal per hour, recovering rare earth minerals vital for electronics.
So we can take the whole value out of it and reintegrate it into the global supply chain.
Marie Vaillot is with Cyclic Materials.
Can you explain how important it is here in the United States for this country to be having more sources, domestic sources for rare earth minerals rather than relying on China and other places?
So today, the market, when it comes to rare earths, is overly dominated by China. It's over 90% of the global supply. This supply is obviously at risk with ongoing tensions. So what Cyclic Materials does is we recycle the end-of-life materials to recover these very rare earths and reintegrate it into the supply, which is a critical need for any industry in the U.S.
Mark Freeman is mayor of Mesa, where the Cyclic Materials factory is being built. He says his city is perfectly situated for a boom that drives jobs and other economic growth.
We have a great manufacturing community here already. The president continues to support and bringing manufacturing back to the United States. I know when I was younger, everything was built in the United States and it's gone offshore or elsewhere. But when we look at it overall, it's just a great thing for the United States. So I welcome it.
Beyond national security, the economic ripples are immense. TSMC's Phoenix expansion could generate 40,000 construction jobs and tens of thousands of tech positions. Jennifer De La Cruz is training to be an equipment technician here.
I feel like it's a totally different path to what I was doing before. Before I was doing fast food, I did CNA, Amazon. I've been in Amazon for 4 years. So I feel like this is like a whole 180 from all of that. But I find it more interesting.
Does this feel like more of a career choice versus just a job?
Yes. Not only is it like a feeling like there's a lot of people here, there's a lot of chance to grow. Unlike my other jobs, it was just kind of stationary, one place, no chance to like progress anywhere.
Does it make a difference as to the stated policy of who's in charge and what their vision is?
I think the policies that have put in place are really helping to drive the construction and manufacturing here, and also removing some of the roadblocks that might exist as well related to policies or things like that.
As factories rise and workers train, there are high hopes that a comeback is taking root. If Trump's vision delivers, the results could write the next chapter in America's manufacturing story. And for more on this story, look up my podcast, Full Measure After Hours. Coming up next on Full Measure, pain being felt by U.S. farmers. Will there be gain? A key part of President Trump's trade deal with China this past week reopened the market for American soybeans. If you think soybean sales don't mean a lot to you, they actually impact national food prices, export revenues, and taxpayer-funded agricultural subsidies, affecting economic stability and consumer costs for all of us. A lot of soybean farmers have spent this past growing season working on hope and a little faith in President Trump. Mackenzie Frost reports from Indiana.
The sight of a dust cloud in a field on a bright, sunny day usually means one thing. It's harvest season. This 2,200-acre plot near Rensselaer, Indiana, is where Kendall Culp and his family have been working the land for more than 50 years.
You said soybean, corn, and wheat. What's it going to look like for you? You're in the middle of harvesting right now. How are the prices going to be?
So the prices are not good for the grains. We're very diversified. As a family operation, we try to stay diversified. So if one commodity is struggling, hopefully another one brings that up from a financial standpoint. But grain prices, of course, are subpar. There's a lot of issues, I think, that are addressing that or that are causing that low prices to be. So it's definitely a below break-even year as far as for corn and soybeans.
China was the largest export market for American soy, typically buying some 60% of U.S. soybean exports. But until a deal with China just announced, that had ground to a halt. China was boycotting U.S. soybeans in retaliation for President Trump's tariffs. China imported 0 U.S. soybeans in September.
Are the tariffs part of that conversation, given the fact that China is no longer part of the conversation when it comes to buying soybeans in the United States?
Obviously, we need China to be part of our market. What we found is we really had too much reliance on one country for our soybean exports, and that was China. About a third of the soybeans that are raised in this country pre-tariffs went to China. I mean, that's an amazing number to think, a third. Over half of what we export went to China.
Culp is also a Republican state representative and the vice president of the Indiana Farm Bureau. He says the summer's trade war with China was like deja vu all over again.
Now, I would say we had this during the first Trump administration as well. The president had our backs.
In Trump's first term, China's farm purchases dropped from $19.5 billion to $9 billion. The Department of Agriculture responded with direct payments for qualified American farmers, spending $11.5 billion in 2017 and more than $32 billion by 2020.
Do you hear from farmers that they blame the Trump administration? Are they upset with the policies that they're seeing from Washington?
Surprisingly, no. About 70% of rural Indiana voted for President Trump for re-election. They're sympathetic with the fact that China is kind of the bully in the world, and we're not going to stand for that. And most countries can't stand up to China. And so I think farmers in general are going to say, we want to do our part. We want to help as well. If we're going to have some short-term pain for long-term gain, we're willing to do that, but we also have to stay in business. And I think the White House understands that.
That sentiment is felt across county lines.
This is my grain handling facility,
where Alan Buchanan has been farming this land near Fowler, Indiana since 1997.
I supported this administration, and I feel like it will sort itself out.
The deal with China is even more welcome because although President Trump promised a fall bailout of up to $10 billion, that relief has been held up by the government shutdown.
Is it up to the federal government to help farmers who are impacted by the tariff policies by utilizing that money?
I don't think it's necessarily their responsibility, but I think it's very wise to do so. It comes back to food supply and really national security. It's always been that way, is whenever farmers are in a tough spot, you tend to look to the government for answers.
How long can the short-term pain last?
We had hoped that we would see some kind of agreement with China before harvest. Yeah. That hasn't happened.
And then it did.
It was an outstanding group of decisions. We're in agreement on so many elements, large amounts, tremendous amounts of the soybeans and other farm products are going to be purchased immediately.
China has agreed to purchase 25 million metric tons of U.S. soybeans annually as part of the new agreement, with almost half of that coming between now and January. That will open the China market up again, but Indiana farmers are planning forward. They've learned to diversify crops. Now they're going to diversify markets.
We're trying to really focus on the markets that are open for us. Indiana recently signed a letter of intent with Taiwan to purchase a huge sum of soybeans in the next 4 years, $3.5 to $4 billion worth of soybeans, which is going to be huge for Indiana farmers.
Farmers have always survived on hard work, along with hope and more than a few prayers. Geopolitics have become part of the change, while the old challenges remain the same.
There's a lot of places around the state and even the Midwest where they weren't as fortunate with summer rains and maybe spring rains where they weren't able to plant as timely as we were. Production costs have risen dramatically. And with crop prices, you know, kind of in the tank, there's a lot of concern going into 2026.
You went to Indiana before President Trump announced the new deal with China. Do you know what these farmers are thinking about this deal?
So we contacted them after the news of this deal on Thursday, and Alan Buchanan called this a game changer for profitability. Kendall Culp said that it is welcome news on top of a year that had a great harvest. And we're seeing the market put dollars behind this new deal and the news of it, right? Soybeans hit their highest price in over a year.
Hope that works out. Sounds good. Thanks, Mackenzie. And ahead on Full Measure, D.C. schools, high costs and poor performance. The nation's capital should be a model for public schools. Instead, Washington, D.C. taxpayers pay among the highest in the nation per student, only to see that produce one of the worst outcomes year after year. Lisa Fletcher investigates.
Are you excited? New day?
Yes.
New school?
Yeah.
That's 11-year-old Leah Terzis on her first day of 6th grade. She's attending private school in nearby Maryland, even though she lives in Washington, D.C. Her mom, Melissa, decided to take Leah and her older sister, Mercina, out of D.C. public schools when it became clear the girls weren't being properly prepared for middle school.
What are the main factors that drove your decision to move the girls from DC public schools into private?
So having a lack of confidence in some of the subjects that they were going to be able to grasp what they needed to be successful in middle school and high school.
A glaring example jolted Melissa when her older daughter was in the 2nd grade.
She came home one day in September and we said, oh, tomorrow's a new month. And she couldn't figure out what month came after September. And we were thinking, what did we miss? Were we supposed to do that?
As for Leah, she struggled with math and was falling behind, lost in a sea of students.
Any thoughts on what the rest of your education is going to be like being in a private school? What do you want it to be?
I want it to be really organized in a way, and I want to be a lot more organized than I was at my old school, because in my new school we get planners and we have to fill them out. We didn't have that at the old school.
The Terzis' decision to pay to put their girls in this private school in another state is a result of a long-standing controversy in the nation's capital. Washington, D.C. spends more per student than most any other school system in the country, yet consistently ranks near rock bottom in terms of how well kids learn. According to a 2024 report, taxpayers here spend close to $27,000 per student each year, well above the national average and second only to New York. Yet 67% of 4th graders can't do math at grade level. 70% are failing reading standards. By 8th grade, it gets worse. 80% fall below grade level in math, 75% in reading.
As a parent, are you getting your money's worth?
Nope. We ended up bringing a tutor on in 4th grade for my older daughter because there was just concepts she wasn't getting.
Carly Sessoms teaches 4th grade in Washington, D.C. public schools and believes district leadership is the problem, allowing students who struggle with the basics to advance.
If we are moving children through the system that are not proficient in reading and writing and basic math, how are we serving that child when back when they were 9 or 10 years old, we saw this potential path for the next 5 to 7 years. It's tragic.
We still have many students who are not achieving at their fullest potential.
We asked Paul Kine about the criticisms from teachers like Sessoms. He's D.C.'s deputy mayor for education, appointed by the mayor in 2018.
With so few 8th graders being proficient in math and reading, what's the district's policy on holding students back?
We do not typically hold students back unless they fail their classes. So if you pass your classes and you have achieved the milestones that we expect of you, then you can move on to the next grade. If you retain students, you actually end up with worse outcomes for those students than if you don't.
Are taxpayers getting the value out of their dollar here?
Yes, 100%. It's true that we're starting from a foundation that none of us would be proud of and that none of us want. But the question I think that families ask is, are you actually doing your best to continue to improve the learning outcomes? There's no quote-unquote silver bullet for any of this, but are we making the right investments that are causing our schools to do better and better every year? And the answer is a yes.
33% proficiency in 4th grade math doesn't seem better, but Kine points out that's up from 24% just 2 years earlier, giving D.C. the biggest gain among urban districts. Still, not good enough for families like the Terzises, who say they can't afford to waste time.
There's so much change, but there's so much stuff that happens to prep them for high school. We wanted to actually just get them out and get them into a private school where there would be a lot more hands-on education. They definitely get a lot more focus. They get a lot more attention. Nobody's left behind.
A number of school systems similar in size to D.C. actually spend less and get better results. Austin, Texas, and Charlotte, North Carolina spend about half of what D.C. does, and they do better on the nation's report card. But in urban districts of similar size, D.C. is the fastest improving in the nation. Comparisons like this can be difficult because there are a lot of variables like student population, demographics, and cost of living. In Washington, D.C., I'm Lisa Fletcher for Full Measure.
And after a break, what's ahead next week on Full Measure? Next week on Full Measure, the mysterious and remarkable cold case of a young girl murdered in Florida, unsolved for decades.
I just remember the police were at our house that day, and everybody was upset. And that's really all I basically remember from that. And then we was told she was gone, and after that I'm 5, so there really wasn't too much else I could do or know.
A staggering coincidence that ultimately brought long-lost family back together next week on Full Measure. Until then, thanks for watching. I'm Sharyl Attkisson.